Hello, Strategy Gamers. This is Gamer1745 with my continuing look at Manor Lords, the demo. Now, if you've seen the earlier parts of this series, you'll notice everything's changed because the game is unsavable. The demo is. So, yeah, I didn't leave it running on my system. It runs hot. My system is running hot right now. And we can see absolutely nothing happening. So, all I can think of is, this needs some serious work before it is released. And not that, they claim it's rough, and, and I don't mean it as a slight or a criticism of, like, the final product. Just commenting about what we have here so far. So I had to start over again because I couldn't save it. So this is where we're at, and I want to explain sort of what's going on. Okay, well, we did get some emmer or wheat planted, as well as some flax planted, but a bit late. So we can see here it's almost ready to harvest, but we're already into December. So I'm going to force an early harvest on this. We're going to do that, and we're going to come over here, and we're going to reduce some of these down here. That's giving us I believe. Let's and I'm going to go over. Oh, well, hey, if you're new here, of course, I hope you smash or lick. You can either smash or lick the subscribe button. And everybody, I hope I'm earning you to lick or smash the like button. Okay, so just got to get that out of the way. Say it, call to action. It normally helps. Okay, so what we've done here is we have 3 families here, 8 of them, so let's do that so that we have farm workers. Now, I will continue to go over, if you watch my earlier segment, some of the stuff I've learned since then. So let's just hit play, let it go at sort of normal speed for a moment. So before this, I don't know how realistic this game is. I do know in Britain, normally when crops failed, it was because it rained on nearly ready to harvest crops. Often they would dry out. That's getting ready to harvest. And then if it rained, you could ruin the crops. Where here in America, normally if everything failed, it is because of lack of rain. I find that sort of interesting. Stocks damage, weather, food stall. Okay. Yeah. Okay. We have somebody working in the food stall. Okay. I can't get over that. Okay. While that's all going on, I was able to. I've only traded for 4 sheep, I think. Where are they? Maybe sheep somewhere here. Huh? Oh, they're in the pasture. Or they're in this thing here because it's winter, maybe? I'm not sure. Or to be shorn. They were getting wool from the field. Okay, I don't know. We still have a guy working, our family working there. So I built a livestock trading, was able to trade for 4 sheep and 2 more oxen. And another important thing is, if you're whether playing the demo or later on, here, say if you want to sell pelts, you want to set the target here, export target if it's greater than target. So like if you want to keep a minimum amount of pelts, you still have 2 there. Anything above that, they will try to sell. So what I've done with the food for meat, anything over 100 or over 100 in storage, they will try to sell to the traveling salesman. I'm trying to buy another Or if target is less, then they'll try to buy some more tools if they are available. Okay, so we have these people here. They're doing early harvest. I don't know if freezing or whatnot in this game is going to destroy things or whatnot. Very well likely could. Harvest, but let that one get done. I have a total of 3 oxen. They've only seemed to be using 2 with the hitching post, so I'm not sure. They're all ruined or not. Maybe not. Yeah, it looks like they'll be able to put some of them stuff into here. Bury it there, maybe? I don't know. This is as far as I've gotten, obviously, because I can't save it. I have built a windmill and then a communal oven for once we have the grain harvested, then we can start processing it. Now also here, we can come here and look at like wheat fertility. Definitely setting up for crop rotation, but just one season that just completely burnt that field out. Flax fertility completely burnt that field out. Barley, which I don't know, is not doing terribly well, and rye is doing very well in a lot of places, so I don't know. We could allow that to lay fallow next season. Okay, they're heading off to the other field to gather that up. We'll see how much. Now they're going to go get it from the field with the cart I see moving there. I don't know. Bags down. Him with a scythe there. Obviously anything would be destroyed by this point in reality, but again, this is still just the demo, and I don't know how close the game is intended to be to reality. What is... well, take the stuff over to here, guys. Whole big thing here. Stocks damaged by weather. Yeah, okay, we'll get the stuff to the... I don't know. This may have been a complete failure. Here. these guys are carrying sacks. I'm not really sure what they're... Now they're bringing stuff in here. Wheat. That doesn't so far look like any flax. That'll probably be under generic. Made many more of the houses with big enough backyards for either chicken or goats, and yes, both of those will produce surpluses enough that will go into the granary. How much bread that's going to produce. Back up and pick up the flax, it looks like. Oh, pick up what they can of it. Oh yeah, this food stall. Okay, yes, we're getting flax in. We're getting grain, it's being threshed. The threshing priority is medium. Alright, well, let's slow this back down to a walking pace. Yeah, let's go fallow here as well. Right, so what we're going to do is I'm still not absolutely sure how to get these to upgrade to get to the level 2 for this scenario. But up here it says village, because we're in right now current small village. So I don't know if it needs to be large village or we need a church. So we have there. So we'll let's down to that. That will put a lot of free people over to working there. So after all that, because of damage and maybe early harvest, we only got 30 flax, it looks like. I think it was going to be 80 or 90. So I need to get the fields done earlier. Like I say, I've got 3 oxen here. 2 seem to... Okay, well maybe they're using the 3rd here. Now, I don't know. I don't know if they'll use that for the... plowing or not. Boy. Okay. Okay, another thing. Let's pause this here. Barley, rye. Rye is just about everywhere. I don't know if that'll make bread, like rye bread or rye wheat. You can see, not very good there unless we want to cut down trees. Could put it right along there, but we want to do some barley. Let's see if we were to. And we want to do. It's not letting us do rye, I see here. Okay, well, let's try barley at 65%. Here. No, not letting us do that. So, let's just do some wheat. So I guess that rye is not yet available. Okay. Well, I figured winter would be a good time to get that. Looking. The church building after the harvest. Okay, so our pantry is nearly full here. So what we need to do here is let's yeah, well, we can get 3 people right now over here, and then hopefully they'll come and get that functioning. People here, that's good. And it looks like they're wheeling over. That's pretty good. And so work seems to be really, you can do it as seasonal, or bringing in the crops. And let's see about one more. The attempt. I want to bring up a post. You won't see it here. I'll let this keep running while I alt tab over. Window here. Now, I love it when you guys comment here. And I'm happy to receive, Han even replied to me. Okay. Now, I'm not going to bring up his name. Not just because I don't, not that I don't want to give knowledge. He watched the first episode here, and you can go in and post it here. I'll read to you while we're looking at this, what's going on here. Lol, sadly, this isn't historical, but it is pop history. The Dark Ages were actually a time of astonishing light in a previously dark areas for literature sources among the Scots, Irish, Anglo-Saxon, Norsemen. I don't know if he means Norman, but Norsemen, whatever. Arabs, I don't know, Slavs, etc. The problem is that they were largely religious fields of light and therefore dismissed by later scholars as not enlightening because they were religious, etc. The life of the average Roman farmer, tenant, or landowner, aka peasant, altered rather little whether the overlord was Roman or German, a vulgar bishop, or a cultured senator. It was the centralizing bureaucracy of the elites that ceased to have a central role in daily life. I know that would not make such a fun game. Okay, he's commenting on, my my comment on the Dark Ages, and I'll get to his. I haven't even read his response to my response yet here, but I like to talk much more than I like to type. But I did type quite a bit for this. I know the whole large-scale Romano-Britain agriculture collapsed after the Romans left. Okay, so in Britain, when you hear Roman villa, you might be thinking a palatial house, not a palace, but a grand house, and they were. But they were also very much part of an industrial scale agricultural complex, at least mostly agricultural. And, with barns and, some for, storage of grains and others for, I just wanted to get that. Okay, wanted to see the pantry size. Okay, we're getting flour. Let's add a person here so that we can now get some of the flour over there. Some for storing animals, some for storing grains and other activities. Okay, that's just gone. That collapses when the Romans leave. Many small Celtic farmers held on for a while, but the pagan Anglo-Saxons pushed out Christianity because the commenter really talked about religious viewpoints. I'm sort of saying that. In many areas, houses for them went from Celtic roundhouses. Now, the Celtic roundhouse is at least an Iron Age house, maybe even older. It is a roundhouse. It predates Rome. It's there through Rome's period of occupation, and it's there after Rome leaves. They're still using the roundhouse, but it is replaced with a rectangle Saxon houses. So these are German houses here. I don't know if they're particularly Saxon, but they're replaced with this. And people originally thought because of place names changed, because of burial traditions changed, because though often using the same location, but burial styles changed, and housing changed. They thought the Anglo-Saxons replaced, killed off, drove out, whatever, the Celtic Britons. Well, genetic studies, and I'm far from an expert on any of this, but the genetic studies that I understand that have been done with very rural populations of Britain, and they've been able to match to some pre-Roman samples of genetics to match them, and there's a lot of the same markers. So, and maybe even even to the periods of pre-Celtic. So they've adjusted their from the late 19th century to now. They've adjusted their thinking that Celts weren't so much a genetic group of people, but a cultural group of people. And so when Celtism, shall we call it, the Celtic culture comes to Britain, and it starts down in sort of northern Danube River Valley and stuff from some authors I've read, and that maybe not correct for current thought, but that is sort of the thought, and spreads out from there, east and west, and eventually makes it to Britain. So instead of maybe the Celts coming in and replacing, slaughtering, driving out whatever the pre-Celtic peoples were, maybe just living the Celtic lifestyle seems so much better than the previous one, kind of thing. So whatever it may mean. And so now they also find a lot of Anglo-Saxon genetic markers in these very rural people. They're testing very rural people that seem to have a very multi-generational way back there, as opposed to urban populations that move around, feeling that maybe the urban populations intermixing and moving around more might be bringing Welsh or Highland Scots or Irish mix into it more. But that's why they're going to the sort of rural setting. So maybe so much as not some, and they definitely, Anglo-Saxon did bring their women over, and they definitely dominate. They definitely, like I say, Celtic place names almost disappear. Everything, burial styles often are done in the same location as Celtic burial places, but they bury people differently. So they just sort of thought, well, this was a holy place, so the new people buried there. Well, it's just the Celts just converted to Anglo-Saxon practices, but I guess maintain some of the same holy places. So we see that. So that's the average farmer. But there was a whole massive pottery industry, industrial level pottery industry that collapsed when the Romans are pushed out of Western Britain, or Western Europe, sorry, not Britain, but all of Western Europe. In Britain and in other places, there are huge factories of pot making of various types, whether it's a plate, whether it's a big jug, or a small pot, whatever. The best mass commercial that I know of, at least, is called Samian ware, and I think it comes from the south of France, and it is a reddish clay, really nicely fired, and you find this all over Roman Britain and other places. And so, as well as local mass factories of pots, and they can tell that they were made in the same fashion. They weren't just made locally in each little village. These are industrial scale industries. These aren't just cottage scale. That collapses. That just goes. And trade just about entirely collapses. Yes, we can see some evidence of out in Cornwall trading still with the Mediterranean in the Dark Ages, but they're looking at these are sort of outposts of Romano-Briton types that are still around there, and Cornwall particularly has tin, so that would be something very valuable that merchant traders still show up for. But the scale of trade going around with the collapse of Rome is just gone. Okay. And I say, next paragraph, in your time of astonishing light, destroyed over 90% of human literature of the classical world. Just gone. Absolutely gone. In some cases, we have titles of books, but not the books themselves, in some few cases. Now, I don't know what the Okay, they got their pantry, lots of flour. They have some bread already being made. These guys are still crashing over. Good. So it's probably more like 99%, but we're going conservative and say 90% of classical human literature, and I'm talking published literature, a published book, not just somebody's letter to somebody else. Or okay, settlement level increased, new development point. Okay, well, now does this allow us to? No. Okay, so what are we? Next level is Manor. Well, maybe we need to build a okay, what we sort of, I think, also need to do here, and I'm still playing the game, of course. We've been storing up some, we also have a bunch of flax here as well as flax over there. Okay, good. And we have some wool. I guess the flax doesn't need to be, okay, just doesn't need to be processed more. I thought it might be. All right, so we need to do a weaver's shop. Yeah, right next to the storehouse there. I think that would be good. So let's build that next. All right. And let this go. So, human literature, and I value human literature very highly. And it's, in the classical world. And it's also gone in the Eastern classical world of, Persia and whatnot. A lot of, whether it's Christianity or later Islam, is just destroying classical literature of the East and the West. It's a purging of it. And so we'll get to my third paragraph, and I will read, I don't know how much he has there. Okay. Largely religious fields of light. I'm sort of quoting him. All dissent in religious matters was violently crushed. Just go ask the Cathars and the Arians, followers of Arius. Oh, you can't. They were killed. Unless you followed, I called it the Catholic dogma. Catholic means universal. I know there's Eastern Orthodoxy, but the Nicene Creed, blah, 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 blah. You were crushed, militarily crushed. A similar thing is going on under Islam. They're crushing Christianity. Yeah, Christians are sort of in some places kind of allowed to survive, sort of kind of a bit, and Jews are sort of kind of a bit, but they're crushing. And of course there is the Shiite and Sunni and maybe some other sub-elements of Islam around. I'm not an expert on Islam, but they're crushing other viewpoints. So I wouldn't call the Dark Ages an area of largely religious fields of light. And a lot of the early Christian, and I always start to blank on when I try to pull up names, a lot of the early Christian thinkers that are coming along either pre-Dark Ages or very sort of early in the Dark Ages, like in North Africa. Yeah, that's before the conquest, or, the Dark Ages gets there. Okay, I'm not going to continue to embarrass myself here. Let me pause this, and I'm going to come up here and scroll to read more. Oh God, he's giving me a wall of text. Okay, well, I guess we can go through this. Very nearly, but not quite. Britain was still a net exporter of grains and animals long after AD 409. It was the Roman bureaucracy that collapsed. This was especially trying for the armies and those whose businesses was to supply them after AD 450. A good many of those suppliers in Britain hard-pressed their new Anglo-Saxon soldiers and overlords asked Britain authorities, the continent, to give them sanctuary, as had the Goths. By the way, these Britons were accepted and said, yeah, I know in Brittany, yeah, those are basically refugees. from the Anglo-Saxons. Remaining ordinary Romano-Briton farmers carried on doing, yeah, they for a while, but like I say, they get overwhelmed and converted over to Anglo-Saxon style farming and living. And what as for Christianity in Britain and elsewhere, it mainly a city or town villa experience, hence the term pagan. Countryside dweller customs, oddly Christian community. Yeah, and and he says, well, and this is another point that I didn't bring up in my response to him, that for the average farmer out in the field, nothing really changed. Yeah, but everybody in cities are gone. Cities are wiped out. Oh yeah, London's still around, but it shrinks to like a tenth of its size or less. Other cities are just people are living in amongst the ruins in essence. And so, whether city dwellers were 10% of the population or 70% of the population, I don't think anywhere, that high, but whatever percent, they're just gone. So your specialized human activities beyond sort of subsistence kind of things. So you notice what I've been doing here is, swapping people around without worrying about like skill sets. So all these jobs are within the skill sets of these people here. So yeah. Okay, what I'm going to also build now is down. Let's build now that we have completed, as completing that, we can supply this with some cloth. All right, let's continue, because I'm like I say, I love you guys posting. This is not an attack on him in any way, but I want to get it out to a larger audience, as well as I like to talk more than I like to type. So yeah, the cities are wiped out with the fall of Rome in the West. Oddly, the Christian communities nowadays disappear. They shrank. Towns surviving Chester, Castria, settlements. So Old St. Mary's, Glastonbury was one of the ancient remnants still being used during the they're remnants being used, and buildings original burned down in 11. As for the destruction of much of literature of the ancient world in so far as it influenced Europe, relatively little of the important or useful stuff was lost. Oh, a lot of the important or useful so-called no, God, no. There is so much practical text, including, how to make glass and other things, is just gone. But I don't care whether it's practical or useful. Okay, new messages. Okay, to the region of Reichsfurt, you are hereby on omission of debt for the lands on which the royal crown is granted stewardship to the Honorable Greg. A tax is to be levied upon the land to be paid in precious wealth or labor. Failure to submit payment will find the land's forfeit to the okay. Objectives: pay upcoming royal tax. Okay. How do I pay? Build a tax code. Okay, let me pause this here. I want to get through this before we continue playing. So no, there was a lot of practical literature, but I'm not sure whether the poster is particularly religious or not, but he seems to stress religious stuff, and that could just be from an academic way. But there's a lot of pagan religious literature lost, and if Christian religious literature is important, so is pagan. There is just so much lost, and I don't care, whether somebody thinks it's important or not. To me, the destruction of libraries are evil, evil, evil things. I just don't care sort of justification. So they're just okay, catch back. The Dark Ages 400 to 800, but became extremely rare in the West due to they're disappeared everywhere due to not being suitable. I mean, yes, they're holdouts for a while in the Eastern Roman Empire, but even there, because understand, library, they don't have the printed book; they have the manuscript book, meaning hand copied. So all the books are hand copied. So a lot of books that are published, well, there's 50 copies, 20 copies, 200 copies, and they go into libraries. And now these aren't like lending libraries or even necessarily public libraries. These are libraries in people's houses and other places, like I think some temples maintain libraries. And these are just gone. And you even see the destruction finally of the Alexander. I don't know what, there's various things trying to blame Caesar for the burning of the Alexandria library when, Caesar comes there. It appears that something catches on fire there. But this seems to be the library survives. So I don't know what got burnt. I don't know whether if it was totally burnt down and then rebuilt, so losing a lot of stuff, or whether I don't know what happened. But we know that it's the coming of the Dark Ages finally brings it down, because there's records of the library being there after generations after Caesar. So, and it finally going down then. So yeah. Extremely rare. Okay, no. Main reason of copying. Okay, text. Yeah, not being suitable as Latin school textbooks. Main reason for copying them. Yeah, well, very very few people could read and write, and most of those people were, probably about 70% or more of the people that could actually read and write were in monasteries, so they weren't interacting much with the outside world. They were copying manuscripts and whatnot. Much of the tragic loss came before then, or in what became known as the Middle Ages. Well, you finally have, it happens in stages. It doesn't happen overnight. It happens in the West in the Dark Ages. The Middle Ages, you see the final collapse of Constantinople. A whole hell of a lot is literature's lost there. He's right about that. That is what triggers, after the fall of Constantinople, the Enlightenment in the West is things escaping from Constantinople and the no longer out of hand of burning of pagan texts. And pagan texts would be Aristotle, Plato. No, Socrates didn't write, but people wrote in his name, particularly Plato. But Aristophanes and other people that I can't even dredge up names for that are known, all those texts were just out of hand burnt at times by Christians. A lot of times by people that couldn't read them, as just being pagan texts. They didn't hold the truth anymore. And this cycle is actually Alexander. Okay, he even gets to the actual destruction of the major parts of the library at Alexander. Most likely came under the sieges of Aurelian, 272, Diocletian, 279, rather than some vandalism under. There's some vandalism under Theodosius, and he's pretty good with dates. 391 or Omar, I presume that's going to be a Muslim. In 642, but even then, these copies of ancient texts still survive elsewhere. Antioch, Constantinople. I'm most everything is lost. So much is lost. Something as important to people as the Hebrew Bible in other words, the Torah, is lost, people. There are, or parts of it are, permanently lost. And the reason we know it's permanently lost is because we have it. Well, what do you mean, gamer? You just said it's permanently lost. Right. Parts of the Torah, or the Old Testament, or however you want to say it, my understanding, and I'm not going to use his name just because I don't want to. I didn't ask if he wanted me to shout him out, and I don't want it to be an attack on him. He's presenting his case very, very well. I'm just still disagreeing with it largely. Not saying that his facts are wrong. I'm saying that his big picture is wrong. As into the different destructions of sieges of Alexandria. But you have parts of it, of the Torah, only survive from Alexandria itself because it was translated into Greek for the Jews that only spoke Greek in Alexandria, because there was a Jewish diaspora, of course. And so they translate the books, or however you want to say it, from the Torah into Greek. Well, because of various destructions of temples and sieges of Jerusalem, the only copies they have of some of these religious works are the Greek text from Alexandria. The reason I say that they're permanently lost, unless we find them in some Dead Sea Scrolls in an intact enough manner that we can be sure of what they say and not guess at what they say, to the ardent Jewish scholar, their concern is mistranslation when it comes, because they sort of, I don't know if this is correct, but the Torah is sort of like one long word for God or whatever, in a way. In a way, the lettering itself, the letters itself and their placement and all are holy. Okay, that's fine. I'm not criticizing that. I'm just saying that's their sort of viewpoint. And so when you translate something from, this is why you're not allowed, the only way you can get a copy of the Quran, no matter what language you speak, is in Arabic. You can get a what is it normally called? Not a summary. Or a translation, because they can't translate it, according to them. Like a commentary on the Quran in other languages. So either I have to learn Arabic to read the Quran, or all I can read, I guess is what they're calling it, there may be a better term, I'm not sure, sorry, is like a commentary, is what is in essence a translation, meaning that words as they're translated from one language to another language will have subtly different meanings. Good example, dignitas and dignity. Okay, those are almost exactly the same. Dignitas being Latin for maintaining your dignity, basically. Your dignitas. Now, and so those are pretty good. What I've been told is the where you don't, because this comes from dignitas, pietas, and familiatas, but pietas and piety have two subtly different meanings. Piety is sort of how pious you are, how religious, not how, or how strongly you adhere to your religious beliefs. It's how not how strongly you believe in God or you believe in the religion, but how strongly do you adhere to religious beliefs. Well, pietas is an appearance thing, is not how strong you adhere to religious beliefs, but is how well you perform your sort of state functions which have a religious connotation. So piety and pietas are not exactly 100% lined up. Now there may be 90 or 80% or whatever, and I'm probably not explaining the difference well enough in this for you, but they're not 100%. So if what they're worried about is you translated it into Greek. Well, how good was that translation? And then we're having to guess that what that Greek means, because there's different Greeks, different Greek languages, Koine and other various forms of Greek, and they weren't necessarily as scholarly as saying, this is the dictionary here of these different versions of Greek. That's more fluid over time. So then trying to translate it back to Hebrew, it's corrupted. It's maybe a good commentary on what was lost, but not the actual thing that was lost. And this, I'm using this as an example of something that was very precious to a group of people. And and I get this from documentaries, and I'm sure I'm getting elements of it wrong. Looking at that, and they would even say, yeah, this is a reason, probably a reasonable meaning for what was in these original Hebrew, or maybe Aramaic, but at least Hebrew texts that were lost. But there's a lot of Jewish scholars that study these texts and try to understand the meaning that the people meant when they wrote it, and they dig deep into it and write commentaries and whatnot all on this stuff. And I don't read any of that or understand it, but I understand that they do that, and it's important to them to understand, and I get that. And so I get that it is sort of lost, and that unless they feel they have an accurate original Hebrew text of the document, it's lost. So we know things like that level of importance. So I have to wonder, and maybe this poster knows better than I do, but it can come down to what writings of, I'm not talking some letter to somebody, but what published writings of Plato or Socrates. Well, Socrates again doesn't write anything. Other people write in his name, and sometimes we believe it's accurate, but taking dictation, as it were. Or Aristotle. Do we know what books were lost, or do we just presume we have all of them, but there may be more? Other literatures, other published letters even, or something. So, as opposed to private letters, so much is lost. And I really, really take the Dark Ages as being a tragedy. And as he's pointing out, okay, you have the Dark Ages in the West. You have in the East, the Eastern Roman Empire, as they sort of saw themselves, in a way, all up to the end, but we start calling it Byzantium, based out of Constantinople. But even there, you have great losses with the various situations with the library at Alexandria. You have the Black Death that hits Europe, comes from the east, as far as we know, to the docks, I believe, of Constantinople, from a ship coming across the Black Sea and then into there, that then spreads. So you have just so much loss. And, well, why would a bunch of people dying mean the literature's lost? Well, a lot of times they burnt down buildings because they thought they were infected with stuff. And their books and things like that. So, okay, let's read his last. None of which signifies in making Manor Lords a good game true. It is, nor in making your gameplay very engaging, as always. It is also cheers. Okay, yeah, and he very, very kindly does cheers. But I have a fundamental disagreement. I've heard, I forget her name, a goth historian woman on British television. Maybe, you know who I'm talking about by saying that. She studies sort of the Middle Ages and the Dark Ages there, and does some really good presenter of these topics. And she's one of the people that sort of championing the Dark Ages weren't so dark after all. It's a misnaming, misnomering. There's the Book of Kells or whatever was there, and we have jewelry that was created that survived, and must also have, say, things like clothing that was finely woven or leatherwork that was impressive, but just didn't survive materially for us to look on, or woodworking or whatever. But I say the loss of the cities, Rome goes down to what, 1/10 of its size. People are living in and amongst ruins, and well, I mean, they still are living in amongst ruins. But I really believe the Dark Ages, and they are sort of a rolling element of it, that it's hitting in the West, harshest, earliest, eventually hits in the East. The whole Arab Renaissance, if you will, that also happens, in my opinion, is only because of conquering, the Eastern Roman Empire, in essence. But then I'm saying that, but I'm also thinking Baghdad and other sort of Eastern Persian areas that they destroy lots, but they also save or preserve. I don't know, save wouldn't be the right term, but preserve a lot of stuff there that their scholars look at and develop as well. But I'm very, very much into the idea that the Dark Ages are briefly dark, because I actually believe that for some number of years, some volcano or volcanoes go off and put up a lot of volcanic ash up in the stratosphere that actually makes, for some years, not hundreds of years, but some years, dark. And I think, well, we know, not I think, we know it was warmer during the classical period. We know it gets colder during the Dark Ages. We know there's the warm medieval period. It gets warmer in in the northern hemisphere, or at least Eurasia. And then in the Renaissance, it starts getting cold again. So, and it's only around 1800, starting in the 19th century, post, in the 19th century there, the Victorian age, but before Victoria, it starts to really actually get warmer. So I do believe the Dark Ages were briefly, a few years. Actually, I mean, yeah, you still see the sun, but it was like cloudy all the time, but from a big cloud. Okay, so without fully getting through one of our comforts and conveniences, we are into the next thing. Now, okay, so I need to build a tax collector, it says, right? Build a tax collector to increase treasury. No, that's a gatehouse. Manor house. Bailey wall. Okay, so those are now tax collector, your medium village. Okay, well. Why? Because we are medium village. Okay, this is sort of the chain. Maybe that is. I did not know about this until I just clicked on it. Unknown branches. Okay. Close. Doom this by getting to with the church and whatnot. Level burger plot. Okay, we need 99 burger plots. Or burger plots. may have triggered something that's going to end this soon. Okay, well, good exchange with him. I just want to explain my position and some of the things that fascinate me about this time period. So we're going to end this episode. I think I'll make another one here. Love to hear, let me pause this, love to hear your comments, your thoughts on all of this. It really does fascinate me. I'm enjoying the game. Really cool. But yeah, post your comments. Remember, hit or smash or lick the like and subscribe button if you're new here and everything. So see you next time for, yes, more historical games.